Hello, everyone, and thank you. Mr. Dimon, is it my imagination, or are you absolutely everywhere these days? When you could be business is good, business is booming, you could be just the steward of that growth, basking in the accolades, and you are wading right in, visibly and vocally, into public policy. Why?
First of all, welcome to be here. Thank you very much to have me here. I think Will was referring to that in my chairman's letter this year. I wrote about public policy. I think public policy is probably one of the most important things we get wrong these days. I went through that list of things that America has going for it, which is extraordinary. It's best ever out of respect for other countries, but we have all the food, water, and energy, peaceful and wonderful neighbors in Canada and Mexico, best military, low corruption, great rule of law, widest, deepest capital markets, best universities, some of the most innovative businesses, unbelievable can-do work ethic. But, and we got to hold these two thoughts in the head. They're both true. We have some serious issues. You know, we've had stagnant growth, stagnant middle-class incomes. Low wages haven't been keeping up with the living wage. Obviously, there are unsettled people. The job, and I went through a list of these too, the job participation rate, forget the overall one, just take 25 to 55-year-old men. It's gone from 96% to 86%, lowest of any developed nation. We have 20 million felons, which is terrible. They can't get a job afterwards. 35,000 people die in opioids. So I think there is a legitimate anger in the country. But my own personal view, and the bottom line point is, it's not secular stagnation. It's not because it had to be that way. It's not because it had to be the aftermath of the financial crisis. It's not because there's some mystery thing taking place with monetary policy. It's stupidity. It's bad public policy. Okay, we haven't built a major airport in the United States since Denver 20 years ago. China built 75 in the last 10 years. It takes 10 years to get the average permits for a bridge. Our inner city schools are failing to graduate half the kids, and those who graduate aren't prepared for jobs. 70% of kids between 17 and 24 cannot get into the United States military because they can't read and write, or they're obese or diabetes. 70%. Okay, so it's understandable why people are kind of pissed off in this country, and my point is we got to do something about it.
And is that why you're so vocal right now? Because you're kind of pissed off?
Yeah, because I'm a patriot. I love my country, and I think we got to start doing something about it. And it is nothing to do with Democrats and Republicans. I think the knee-jerk reaction we have between Democrats and Republicans causes the problem. We need facts and analysis. Competent people can do, get it done, fix it, and in a non-parochial way. Like, we got to make it work for everybody, not just a handful of people.
And do we need our business leaders to be more vocal and more active in the public policy arena?
Yeah. So here, I do believe I have something in common with those who blame the leaders of this country and the elite, which includes most of the people in this room. What I just talked about is us. So collectively, we are to blame. Collectively, the leaders should have done something. And so, I think business with government, civic society have to do it together. It can't be done by one without the other. It isn't possible. So real jobs, real education is going to take place at the local level where these businesses, machine tooling or engineering or plumbing or building constructor jobs, et cetera. And so we got to get our schools right. We got to get these things right. But it's not going to just take one or the other. It's not about money. It's about policy.
Before we get into Jamie Dimon's policy approach for the next 100 days, tell me a little bit about, so we've got your shareholder letter, right? For the first time, you had 20 some odd pages on the issue of public policy. You are participating with other business leaders in this administration. You're on Trump's Strategic Business Advisory Council. Are you finding this White House and this administration receptive to candid dialogue? And yesterday I woke up and I said you were everywhere, because it seems like you have been. Yesterday I woke up. I was actually doing that really retro thing of turning the pages and reading a newspaper, the thing that you turn. And there you were on the front page. New York Times report in the Business Council meeting. The president says, so you think China's manipulating currency, don't you? And you said?
No, they're not. Or if they are, they're manipulating it up, not down. And so the answer is yes, he is listening. And I think, before, when he was elected, I'm not even sure he really expected to be elected on that particular day. And I was not a Trump supporter, but they asked me to serve in this. I was criticized by a lot of people, including one of my daughters. But you better be voting for the pilot of the airplane. And I'm a patriot. I'm going to try the best I can to help the country. I was asked to do it, and I think it could make a difference. And I think I'm comforted. I think you should be comforted with the fact, what's the first thing he did? He put top people on the ground, okay? And General Mattis, General Kelly, General McMaster, deeply respected by everyone that I know. And then you have Steve Mnuchin, Wilbur Ross, Gary Cohn, and others, deeply knowledgeable and respected. And I personally think this kind of concept that's grown up over time that if you are successful and experienced, you shouldn't serve in Washington. And I disagree. I think these folks want to do the job. They want to fix it. They're not all experienced in Washington, which I'm not either. But so I'm comforted by that. And you've seen policy changes. You've seen most of the people who've spoken to the president, so I saw it myself, but would say they want give and take. They want strong people with good ideas, and they want to try to get these things done. You and I know it's hard to get these things done, but that's what they want to do.
So what should be front and center on the agenda?
Well, it's another thing. Like, someone said, how do you bridge the gap between how he ran, for working class, white, rural, et cetera, and he's seen a lot of CEOs, et cetera. And what I was told by someone in the White House was jobs. He sees that the most important thing is to create jobs and growth, and I think they are right. I think we can grow at 3%. I think the agenda is spot on right. Corporate taxes, again, this is us. We've been driving brains and capital overseas for 10 years. We knew it was happening. We all advised administrations before. Some of the damage is permanent because they bought companies or built plants overseas or moved research centers overseas. So corporate tax reform, and I heard Secretary Mnuchin say it on TV, or maybe Wilbur said it today, it's been shown that corporate tax reform both enhances growth and it actually increases wages. Infrastructure, spot on. I already spoke about it a little bit. Regulatory reform, not just financial, but just broadly. Let's take just a deep breath. That no one's going to go back to the bad old days. No one's going to go back to deep pollution. But some of these rules and regulations, if you went through them, I mean, honestly, they're sickening. They're stupid. The good old can-do American, get it right, change something, modify something, that's almost gone. And so I think it's absolutely right to get out of the way. You go, this is anecdotal, but it takes a year and 3 licenses to become a barber in New York City. Small business formation in this recovery is the lowest it's ever been in a recovery. Okay, and it's generally because of 2 things. Hard to prove this, but I think it's 2 things. Inability to access to capital, mostly startups, because I think existing businesses, that's not quite the issue. And the second is just the cost and compliance and regulation. It's just crippling some of these businesses. If you don't believe me, ask them. I tend to travel a lot and see a lot of small businesses, and they'll tell you it's the #1 problem.
So which regulations would you start with?
Well, I think they're doing it right, which is cost benefit, 2 out, 1 in. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on the financial side, but they take mortgages. So here, you may not know this. George McGovern ran for president, most liberal man who ever ran for president, lost in a landslide. Went to run a small inn in Vermont or something, and wrote an op-ed article in the Wall Street Journal about 10 years after that and said, a legislator's dream is a businessman's nightmare. And it went through that all the stuff he did as a legislator past the name of good made it impossible for him to run that inn. OSHA, reporting requirements, rules, environmental, local files, federal files, state filing. And he ended by saying, and by not everyone who breaks an ankle on the sidewalk outside the thing was my fault, that the litigation is also crippling these small businesses. So I would start by reduce some of those regulations. In the mortgage side, we have not reformed mortgages yet. We did an analysis, and this is one example, and this has hurt average Americans and the very people that most of my Democratic friends profess to want to help. Because we haven't finished mortgage securitization, mortgage rules, there are 3,000 servicing requirements. The cost of mortgage is higher. Because the cost of litigation is so high, a lot of companies that make mortgages are unwilling to make mortgages with any extra risk. Think of lower FICO, younger, immigrant, self-employed, prior default. Okay? We estimate that would have been almost $500 billion or more of mortgages to those people. Okay? A third of those mortgages probably would have been new households. New homes, I mean, okay? And that would have added 0.3 to 0.4% to GDP a year, for 5 years, how we made this change 5 years ago. That would have been millions of jobs. Household building would be way back up. But one thing, and it takes 7 regulators, and so I'm not blaming each of the regulators, but the way we set up the system is it takes 7 regulators to do that, and they haven't done it yet. And they can do it in a week. It could be done almost in a week. And so I just think if they don't do it, they're hurting young people, immigrants, household formation, not me. They're not hurting JPMorgan Chase or Jamie Dimon. They're hurting our citizens by not dealing with these issues.
So the one change you'd like to see if you had, this was your 100 days and you were going to put that forward would be what?
On regulatory, I won't go through a lot of stuff that we got to relook at we did in banks, but it would be small business regulations. The president, I think, showed a chart, like it's a foot high of rules. They have to get approved to get one infrastructure project done. Now, I don't know how you change that, but I'm sure it can be changed if you have the good old can-do American attitude. So.
Talk about what you've seen in this outline of a tax plan. Pro-growth or pro-wealth?
First of all, we should do the right thing for America and not do the wrong thing because maybe you think it's going to help someone who's wealthy. So I think the most important thing is corporate tax rates need to come down, okay? And that will drive a lot of things. Carried interest will eventually go away. I think the president's right about that. I don't care if they change the top bracket on someone like me. It doesn't interest me at all. And I think that business should support something like on the other side, like the earned income tax credit. If you're a single woman with children and you're making $7 an hour, a little over $14,000 a year, the government will give you a tax credit of $6,000 at the end of the year. That program costs like $60 billion. 27 million people get it. It's lifted 9 million people out of poverty. I think we should double or triple the program, and it should include single men, anyone who's not earning a living wage, to lift people up to a living wage. Jobs bring dignity. That first rung in a ladder often leads to a second rung. People who start working continue working. People who have a job have household formation and they get married. We have a lot of social problems. It would be a great attack on that. It would be sharing the wealth of the country with those people who need a living wage. And I think, so I'm not talking about just corporate tax reform. I do that too. And by the way, Paul Ryan wants that and the Democrats want that. So I think there are things we can do that for infrastructure, earned income tax credits, while we cut corporate taxes that can help a lot of Americans.
You've been vocal that business should be involved in advocating for public policy, but they should move from beyond their parochial interests. Yeah. And you've called yourself a patriot. So give us some examples of what that would look like for a business instead of lobbying for their self-interest.
So I'll give you an example, which is I became the chairman of the Business Roundtable, which is an advocacy group, and it is around tax and trade and immigration and all these other things. I told there's 200 large company CEOs. I told them I'm not going to talk at all about bank reform here, because that's parochial. We should be talking about things that's good for all of America. And CEOs, most CEOs are pretty patriotic. So I'm going to give you all an example. How many of you are from New York and California? You should give that deduction. Okay, it's wrong that the United States government is financing profligate states like California and New York. It's been wrong for years. It's $1 trillion. It'll pay for a lot of things. It should be phased in over time. The Secretary of Treasury said today that you're going to get if they cut the top rate, you get some of that back. It's wrong. I hear people in New York say, well, it's just making up for the fact that we send so much more money to the federal government than we get back. That's because New York is very rich, as is California. That was meant to be that way. It shouldn't be made up with like these tax reforms. So as CEOs, it's kind of, yeah, like if you say we have some tax credits, I get rid of all of them for a 20% tax rate. Okay, all of them. And so I urge people, let's stop being so damn parochial and figure out what makes sense for the country and suck it up and do it. And and we need to do it because we've really gotten bogged down in this stuff. And again, it's us. We collectively have caused it, and we collectively are going to have to fix it, or we're sitting here in 10 years figuring out what went wrong with this great country of ours.
You have a reputation for being able to sniff out danger. That you have a radar where you can see trouble. And
I see it coming right now.
And you've been able to steer your company through some pretty perilous waters. So if you got that radar trained on our future, what are you seeing that's concerning you most?
So I'm not going to go through geopolitics because you all read it and it's scary and it usually doesn't have that effect. And it's kind of like cosmological constant. And often what comes and gets you isn't what you see. Even in major risk, you can think about what you want. It's usually something you didn't see. I always say there's a bullet coming up my head somewhere. It's just not in front of me. And therefore, the protection for those things is well-run companies, capital, liquidity, a lot of stuff that Dodd-Frank did do, by the way. So the real issue I worry about is this bad public policy. I think if we don't fix it, it's leading to terrible in the body politic, terrible debate. We're leaving a lot of people behind. You see what's taking place around the world has similar issues. It creates meanness when it comes to immigration and meanness when it comes to a bunch of other things. So I do think the public policy thing is what has me most worried about the future. Not this thing here about technology. Technology is the best thing that ever happened to mankind. I mean, you all be living in tent and hunting buffalo and dying at 35, but for technology. Okay? Your kids are going to live to 100. Okay? You know, most mankind used to work 7 days a week, then 6 days a week, and now in America we're down to 5, probably 4.5. In Europe, they're already down to 3, generally. You know, it's good. Mankind will adjust. They'll find other things to do as robots take place. And if it goes too fast, then we can have policies that can make up for it. So it's bad public policy, bad reactions to things where people are being left behind who have a legitimate complaint. I think there are legitimate complaints, you know, about what we didn't do to help the problems of these folks. And loss of opportunity, as Jim said before, it's a terrible thing. You know, and then those inner city school kids, it might be a Colin Powell, a Barack Obama, okay, and Albert Einstein. You know, and you'll never know because we didn't give them the opportunity that most of us did have. And I think we need to do that. And if that costs a little bit of money, we should go do it anyway.
And worried about bad public policy, and based on what you've seen in the admittedly very early days of this administration, what public policy twists and turns are you most concerned about?
Look, I think, you know, you had this kind of change of administration, pro-business, pro-these policies. Now you're going to see the sausage get made. So it's going to be great for the press. It's going to be up. It's going to be down. It's going to be gas. You're going to have all the pluses, all the minuses. The New York Times is going to say it's just for the rich. This one's going to. That's what it is. That's called democracy. It's going to be 12 months of this give and take, ugly stuff. But I'm hoping it can be bridged between EITC, infrastructure, what the Democrats want, what some of the Republicans want, and that we do the right things.
So did you tell me what you were most worried about? The sausage making? Was that?
No. It's just bad public policy. I mean, you know, if you know, that's what worried me about Brexit. It wasn't that Brexit itself, is that what it means for like someone, even the European Union. If someone leaves the monetary union, not Greece, by the way, but Italy or France, that's a real problem, folks. That's not a minor problem. Now, I'm not predicting it's going to happen, though. You know, if you were my board of directors, what I always tell my board is we have to be prepared for it, whether or not it's going to happen. I'm not betting on, oh no, don't worry about this. No, I have to bet on it. So we have to prepare for bad events in spite of that.
That's that radar thing again.
Yeah, well, it's a way of thinking. Okay, so we're a big bank in China. I prepare for the worst. I don't expect it to happen. I think China will be a large developed nation in 30 years, housing 40% of the global Fortune 3000. But there's a small chance it doesn't happen that way. They've kicked out all foreigners twice in their history, in the 1300s and Mao. They might do it again. So if you're a shareholder of JPMorgan Chase, I just want to tell you, we'll be fine. It'll hurt. It won't be a good year, but we'll make money. Okay, and that's how we run the company. That here are the probabilities, and we want to be able to handle all set of them, because otherwise, you're taking too much risk.
Yeah. Given how passionate you clearly are about the public policy arena, given how engaged you are, would you consider civil service? Would you consider serving your country in office?
I think your husband should do that.
Not with this wife.
Not with my wife either. It's too late for me, okay? I don't want to be a mayor, senator, governor. Most of these people in politics, somewhat for good reason, have been doing it their whole lives. President Trump is the first president who didn't serve in the military or hadn't had a fairly extensive political career. And I just think it's hard to do. And you gotta start early. I always say, Barack Obama was running for president the day he graduated college.
But this president...
he wrote 2 books about himself before he did anything.
But Jamie, this president... But Jamie, this president has clearly proven that there's a new way, and you are not too old.
That may be true, but just because he did it doesn't mean it opened the door for someone else to do it. And so I just don't think it's my cup of tea or my specialty. I think the best I could do for my country is do what I'm doing right now, and that's it.
Okay. Last question. I know something that you and I were talking about earlier, that you are proud of the progress you made. Not quite talking about succession planning at JPMorgan, but 30% of your top 200 employees are women?
That's correct.
And 30% of your direct reports are women?
That's correct.
So what are the chances?
20% LGBT.
20%?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I think the door to diversity is trust and respect and openness, and everyone knows that everyone's going to be treated equally and fairly. You can have special programs, but and our women, they're unbelievable, and they have these programs called Women on the Move and Women Here, and I always tell them, if I had a program just for men, I'd probably be kicked out of my job. But they are smart, they're dynamic, they're leading the charge themselves, and I think they feel treated very equally in the company. And then lots of little things to do. Like this goes back years ago. Like on pay and promotion committees, make sure they're staffed with women too, so the other women feel it was fair, and they have someone to go talk to if they said this wasn't fair. And so there are a million things you can do. Oliver Wyman had done a report saying you won't have 30% in the executive suites on Wall Street for I think it was 30 years. Well, we already do. I've been trying to get the press to write that. I call them up. I offer to. They have no interest. You're writing something like that.
So what are the odds that the next CEO will be a woman? 30% or greater?
I think it's got a pretty good odds. I mean, the good thing, JPMorgan is chock-stocked with talent, okay? And so it depends when I leave, when I get hit by that proverbial truck, which isn't my preference, but that will depend on the time. But I think there are several people in the company who can succeed me. Okay, and I think there are several women in the company who are or will be on that list.
Okay, well, we haven't ruled out a run for office or greater visibility for you, so we're gonna leave that open. We'll get a woman in the CEO job, and then we'll be done. We'll be great. Jamie Dimon, thank you.
Willow, thank you. Appreciate it.